By the time I received Elisa's message, I had already moved into the apartment the company arranged for me. The admin assistant who came to pick me up was named Lisa. She wore her hair in a neat ponytail and talked the entire ride. "Marco, our place may not be as busy as Beijing, but life here moves at a slower pace. It's comfortable to live in. Across from you is Mario from the R&D department, and next door is Daisy from the testing team. They're all easygoing people." As she helped me swipe open the door, she added, "Oh right, the breakfast shop downstairs has amazing pan-fried buns. You should try them tomorrow morning." The room wasn't large, but it was clean and tidy. Outside the window stood an osmanthus tree, its branches almost reaching into the room. I stood there quietly, looking out at the unfamiliar street below. Slowly, something that had been tightly knotted inside me for a long time began to loosen. Then my phone rang. When I unlocked it, I saw a red notification from Elisa. Her profile picture was still the selfie we took last winter while skiing in Chongli. Both of us bundled up like dumplings, flashing peace signs at the camera with our noses red from the cold. "Marco, why didn't you report to President Zach today? I already spoke to him. You can just go next week, the project team has been arranged. Reply when you see this. Are you being stubborn again?" 20 minutes later, another message came, colder this time. "Pick up the phone. I've got a lot going on. I don't have time to play hide and seek with you." Chapter 1. I didn't reply. After a while, she called directly. The ringtone sounded especially sharp in the quiet room. I answered, but I didn't speak first. On the other end, Elisa's voice carried that familiar slight upward tone at the end of her sentences. The tone she used whenever she believed she was completely in control. I knew it too well. "Finally picked up. I turned down that violet project for you. It's not suitable. I've already secured a spot for you with President Zach. Just go next week." She spoke quickly, like she was ticking off another task on her list. In the background, someone called out, "Sister Elisa," and she answered briefly before continuing. "Did you hear me? Don't drag your feet." "No need," I said. "What?" I said no need. There was a 2-second silence on the other end before impatience crept into her voice. "What do you mean?" I hung up. Almost immediately, my phone began vibrating nonstop. Her messages flooded in one after another. "Explain yourself. Marco, don't throw a tantrum. Peter's onboarding is already giving me a headache. Don't make things worse right now. Pick up the phone. If you don't answer again, then we're done." I stared at the words "we're done," my thumb hovering over the screen. Outside, the osmanthus tree rustled softly in the evening breeze. People downstairs laughed loudly, and somewhere in the distance, faint guitar music drifted through the air. This small city had its own kind of liveliness. And there I was, sitting alone in a strange room, staring at those words on my phone, suddenly finding the whole thing a little amusing. So in her mind, we still weren't over yet. Chapter 2. Elisa and I first met when she was 11 and I was 10. Our families had been close for generations. Our grandfathers had fought side by side in the same military unit, and during holidays and festivals, our families always gathered together for meals. The adults would sit around the table drinking and talking while we kids played outside in the yard. The first time I saw her was in her backyard during a winter when Beijing was buried under heavy snow. I was crouched alone in the yard building a snowman when she suddenly appeared behind me. She wore a bright red down jacket, hands on her hips as she critically inspected my work. "The snowman's head is crooked." I looked up at her. Without hesitation, she stepped forward, adjusted the snowman's head, then grabbed a handful of snow to patch up a dent. After finishing, she took 2 steps back, examined it carefully, and nodded with satisfaction. "That's better." Even back then, her chin was always slightly raised, her eyes full of certainty, like a tiny adult who already knew exactly how the world should work. Later, when we started school, we naturally became inseparable friends. She was the kind of girl who stood out wherever she went. Top of the class, decisive, and always completely sure of what she wanted. Over time, I got used to standing beside her, carrying her backpack, reminding her about assignments, and pulling her away whenever she got into arguments with people. In high school, she once stood up for me. There was a local bully at school who had it out for me, and one day he gathered a few others and cornered me in a secluded area of the playground. They beat me until the corner of my mouth split open, and my uniform was covered in dirty footprints. Somehow, Elisa found out about it. She came rushing over on her bicycle, jumped off before it had even fully stopped, and swung her backpack straight at the bully's head. "Touch him again and see what happens." Her voice was sharp and loud, and her eyes burned with anger. The bully and his friends were so shocked by her that they backed off immediately. She crouched down beside me to check my injuries, muttering curses under her breath while carefully wiping the blood from my face with a tissue. "Why are you such a coward?" she scolded, though her eyes were already turning red. "If anyone bullies you again, tell me." It was from that day on that I started feeling she was different from everyone else. In the spring of our senior year, we got together. Though calling it getting together might not even be accurate, because there was never any real confession. One day after school, she was walking ahead of me when she suddenly stopped and turned around. The setting sun wrapped her silhouette in golden light. "Marco," she asked, "do you want to go to the same university as me?" I said yes. She smiled and reached out to tug lightly on my sleeve. It was the first time she had ever taken the initiative to touch me. The sunset that evening was unbelievably beautiful, the sky glowing with shades of orange and red. I walked beside her on her right side, my heart pounding wildly in my chest. Back then, I truly believed those days would last forever. Chapter 3. Elisa made a lot of decisions for me. In our second year of high school, when we had to choose between liberal arts and sciences, I wanted to study liberal arts. She took my selection form and, right in front of me, checked the box for sciences instead. "Your physics is much better than your history," she said. "Choosing sciences will give you more opportunities later. Trust me." I hesitated for a moment, but in the end I didn't change it. Later, when it was time to apply for universities, I wanted to attend one in the South. Elisa photocopied our application forms and filled them out exactly the same, every choice being a university in Beijing. "Can you even take care of yourself if you go south alone?" she asked with a frown. "Stay in Beijing with me. Our families can both look after us." I thought about it and decided she made sense. 4 years of university, 3 years of graduate school, and 2 years of work. 15 years in total, from the age of 10 to 25, almost every step of my life had been planned by her. What courses I should take, which lab I should join, which company I should work for after graduation, which neighborhood I should live in, even which restaurant we should go to on weekends. And honestly, I never thought there was anything wrong with it. She was smart, capable, decisive, and she always seemed to know the right answer. Slowly, I became used to living inside the plans she made for me, like a satellite trapped in a fixed orbit, revolving around her as if she were the sun. Sometimes I tried to object, but every single time she would say, "Marco, would I ever harm you?" That sentence worked on me like a spell. The moment she said it, whatever argument I had would disappear, and I would swallow the words before they could leave my mouth. Until 3 months ago. Chapter 4. I received the email on a Tuesday afternoon. It was from the admissions secretary at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. The wording was polite and formal. They said the committee had been impressed with my research proposal, but because of unforeseen procedural issues during the recommendation process, my application materials had not been fully received before the deadline. As a result, they regretted to inform me that I would not be moving forward to the next round of evaluation. I read the email 3 times before I could believe I wasn't misunderstanding it. I had spent 2 full years preparing for this program. Since the second year of my master's degree, I had been working on a project specifically designed around one of the research directions at the Max Planck Institute. I had published papers, earned my advisor's support, and even contacted the head of the research group beforehand. He had clearly shown interest in my work. The most important part of my application was Professor Morrow's recommendation letter. Morrow was one of the leading authorities in the field in China, and he had also been Elisa's graduate advisor. She had been the one who made the connection for me, arranging for me to work under Professor Morrow for a summer. The old professor had been very impressed with my performance and personally promised that he would write me a strong and influential recommendation letter. I called the admissions office at the Max Planck Institute, and a woman answered in English with a German accent. Mr. Marco, one of your core recommendation letters was withdrawn by the recommender on the day of the deadline. According to our policy, incomplete applications cannot enter the evaluation process. I'm very sorry. Withdrawn. That single word hit me like a bucket of ice water dumped over my head. That evening, I went straight to Professor Morrow's office. He was grading papers when I arrived. The moment he saw me, he slowly removed his reading glasses and stayed silent for a long while. Marco, he finally sighed. It's not that I didn't want to help you. Elisa came to speak with me at length. She said your heart condition isn't very strong and that the high-intensity work there might be too much for your body. She also told me your families were discussing an engagement and that a long-distance relationship wouldn't work out. He picked up his teacup, then slowly set it back down. I thought this was something the two of you had already discussed. I stood there, suddenly feeling like the office lights were painfully bright. When did she come to see you? I asked. Sometime in mid-June, I think. That girl talked for a long time. Her eyes were even red. She seemed genuinely worried about you. Professor Morrow looked at me apologetically. Marco, I handled this badly. I should have spoken to you first. Mid-June. I immediately remembered that time. Elisa had told me she was on a business trip to Shanghai for an academic conference. She called me every day during that trip, and her tone had been completely normal. She even asked if I wanted anything from Shanghai and said she would bring me back salted egg yolk pastries. She never once mentioned the recommendation letter. Not even a single word. Chapter 5. After leaving Professor Morrow's office, I didn't go home. I walked around the school track for a very long time, until all the streetlights had turned on and the people out for evening walks slowly disappeared one by one. The rubber track made a faint scraping sound beneath my shoes, lap after lap, like I was trapped inside an endless loop. Then my phone rang. It was Elisa. Where are you? I bought salted egg yolk pastries. When are you coming back? Her voice sounded light and cheerful. I could hear the television playing in the background. She was probably curled up on the couch snacking while waiting for me. Soon, I replied. After hanging up, I stayed sitting on a bench by the track for a little while longer. The June night breeze drifted past, carrying the scent of early summer greenery. Suddenly, I remembered that moment during our senior year when she tugged on my sleeve and asked, "Do you want to go to the same university as me?" The sunset had lit up her face, and her eyes had sparkled so brightly. Back then, she really had cared about me. By the time I returned to the apartment, it was almost 11 o'clock. Sure enough, Elisa was curled up on the couch. The box of pastries sat open on the coffee table, and an old movie was playing quietly on the television. When she saw me walk in, she lifted her chin slightly. "Why are you back so late?" "I had something to deal with," I replied as I changed into my slippers and walked over. Beside the pastries was her tablet. A document was open on the screen with the title, Max Planck Institute Application Guide, Peter. Peter. My eyes stopped on that name for a moment. "Oh right, there's something I need to tell you," Elisa said casually as she broke a pastry in half and handed one piece to me. I used Professor Morrow's recommendation letter for Peter. His qualifications are good enough, and there happened to be an opening at the Max Planck Institute. You're both on the same side, so it shouldn't be a big deal, right? Her tone was so casual, as though she were simply commenting on the weather. I took the half pastry from her hand but didn't eat it. "When did you decide this?" "Last month, when I went to Shanghai. I met with Professor Li while I was there and talked it over," she said while taking a bite herself, her words slightly muffled. "I'm telling you, Peter hasn't had it easy. His parents are farmers back in his hometown. They've already done everything they can just to support him through graduate school. This opportunity is really important to him." "And it's not important to me?" I asked quietly. She looked up at me, seeming genuinely surprised that I would even ask something like that. Her brows slowly drew together, That familiar expression I had seen countless times whenever she was trying to decide if I was being serious or simply emotional. Don't you still have other opportunities? My dad's connections. I spent 2 years preparing for this. I cut in. My voice stayed calm, but every word came out clearly. 2 years. Every paper, every set of data, every late night. And with one decision, you blocked my path. Then you handed that path to Peter. What do you mean? She set the pastry down, her expression shifting from confusion to irritation. I did it for your own good. The head of that lab is known for being extremely demanding, over 80 working hours a week. Did you forget what happened in senior year? Senior year. 2 months before the college entrance exam, I collapsed in the classroom. At the hospital, they diagnosed me with viral myocarditis. It wasn't severe, but I needed rest, and I spent half a month hospitalized. Back then, Elisa came to see me every single day after school. She helped me catch up on lessons and brought soup her mother made. I still remembered her sitting beside my hospital bed with red eyes, saying softly, "Marco, you scared me to death." I did have a history of myocarditis, but that had been 6 years ago. Since then, every annual checkup had been perfectly normal. Basketball, swimming, hiking. I had never had any problems. I consulted a doctor, Elisa continued. People with myocarditis shouldn't stay in high-pressure environments for long periods. You wouldn't be able to handle the pace in Germany. You consulted a doctor. Did you ask me? Her expression froze for just a second. Did you ask me if I was willing? Did you ever ask what I wanted? Chapter 6. The living room fell silent. The old movie on the television kept playing, the male lead chasing after the female lead through heavy rain. The soundtrack was loud, which somehow made the silence between us feel even sharper. Elisa stood up and walked over to me. She was half a head shorter than me, so she had to tilt her chin slightly upward to meet my eyes. "Marco," she said softly, her tone gentler now, "stop this. I know you're angry, but I really thought this through. If you can't go to Germany, you can go somewhere else. Worst case, I can ask my dad." Elisa Lynn. The moment I said her full name, she froze, because I had never called her that before. I always called her Elisa, or jokingly Boss Lynn or Miss Lynn. Since the day I met her at 11 years old, I had never once addressed her by her full name. "Let's break up." The instant those words left my mouth, the air in the living room seemed to turn cold. She stared at me, panic flashing briefly through her eyes before disbelief quickly replaced it. The corners of her lips even lifted slightly, as though she were waiting for me to laugh and say it was a joke. "Over this recommendation letter? Over this? Marco?" She took a deep breath, like she was forcing herself to stay patient. "I already explained everything to you. I did it for your own good. If you can't go to Germany, then fine, there are other paths. And you want to break up over this?" I didn't answer. I turned around, walked into the bedroom, and pulled a suitcase out of the closet. She leaned against the doorframe, arms folded across her chest as she watched me pack. I knew that posture too well. It was the way she stood whenever she thought I was acting unreasonable. "Packing again? Planning to stay at your own apartment for a few days this time?" There was even a faint trace of amusement in her voice, like she thought this was just another one of my temporary moods. I folded the last piece of clothing, placed it into the suitcase, and zipped it shut. Then I stood up and looked directly at her. "Elisa, this isn't about Germany. Then what is it about? Because from beginning to end, you never once thought this was something you needed to discuss with me." Her frown deepened. "In your eyes, my life is just another line in your planner. You can change it whenever you want, erase it whenever you want, and you're always certain I'll accept it. You never even think to ask me first." I was doing what was best for me. I finished for her. "You're always doing what's best for me. Choosing sciences for me in high school, that was what's best for me. Filling out my college applications, that was what's best for me. Picking my advisor, finding me a job, and now ruining my application. That's all supposedly what's best for me too." I pulled up the handle of my suitcase. "But have you ever once thought about how I feel every time you do what's best for me?" She didn't answer. I dragged my suitcase past her while the old movie continued playing in the living room. On the screen, the male lead had finally caught up to the female lead, and the two of them were kissing in the rain. The half-eaten salted egg yolk pastries still sat on the coffee table. "Marco," Elisa called out from behind me. I stopped walking, but I didn't turn around. "If you walk out that door, don't regret it." Her voice had returned to that cold, confident tone I knew so well. It was the way she protected herself. Whenever she felt threatened, she instinctively put up sharp defenses. "I won't regret it," I replied. The moment the door closed behind me, I heard something shatter inside the apartment. It was probably her favorite ceramic mug, the one with the goofy Shiba Inu printed on it, the mug I had given her for her birthday last year. I didn't look back. Chapter 7. During the first week after the breakup, I didn't receive a single message from her. Our mutual friends, however, reached out a few times. Alan cautiously messaged me on WeChat. "Marco, what happened between you and Elisa?" She suddenly deleted all her posts. I replied, "We broke up." Alan immediately sent a long string of shocked emojis before asking, "Wait, seriously this time?" Even our friends couldn't believe it. Since high school, Elisa and I had argued countless times and broken up just as many. Every single time, she was always the one who came back first, not to apologize, but to pull me back to her side. Sometimes she would send a message like, "Are you done throwing a fit yet?" Other times she would simply appear at my apartment carrying 2 cups of milk tea, acting as if nothing had happened at all. And every time I went back. But this time was different. This time I deleted every possible way to contact her. WeChat, phone number, Weibo, Alipay, even NetEase Cloud Music. I removed everything. Then I started sending out resumes nonstop. Within 1 week, I received 3 interview offers, 2 in Beijing and 1 in a southern coastal city. I didn't discuss it with anyone or ask for anyone's opinion. I attended all 3 interviews on my own. In the end, I chose the company furthest south. It wasn't a huge company, but it was highly respected in its field. The team leader's surname was Fong. During the interview, he spoke with me for 3 full hours. He never once asked if my heart was healthy or whether I could handle stress. He only asked me one question: "Are you interested in this field?" I answered yes. He nodded and said, "That's all that matters. Everything else is secondary." I signed the contract, rented an apartment, and bought a one-way high-speed train ticket. The day I left Beijing, the August heat was so intense it felt like the asphalt might melt beneath the sun. I dragged my suitcase through Beijing's South Railway Station, and while passing a milk tea shop, I suddenly stopped. It was Elisa's favorite brand. I stood there quietly for a few seconds before continuing to walk away. Chapter 8. Peter, on the other hand, continued updating his WeChat constantly. News of my breakup with Elisa didn't seem to affect him at all. Every single day he posted something new. One day it was attending an academic salon, the next day visiting a laboratory, the day after that having dinner with someone important. Every post came with carefully edited photos. He really was handsome, fair-skinned and refined, wearing gold-rimmed glasses with a faint smile always lingering at the corners of his mouth. Even his captions were carefully crafted, never too arrogant and never too humble, always perfectly balanced to subtly show off how exceptional he was. In early September, he posted a 9-photo collage. The photos were taken inside a luxurious hotel conference hall. Peter stood on stage holding a certificate for the Best Presentation Award at the Young Scholars Forum. Beside him stood Elisa in a dark green suit dress, her hair neatly tied back, smiling with calm elegance. The caption read, "From choosing the topic to finalizing the draft, every step was guided by Senior Elisa. Without you, there would be no me today. Grateful." Elisa liked the post and commented with a simple keep going emoji. But what hurt me even more was the fountain pen clipped inside Peter's chest pocket. On the cap was an engraved letter E. Elisa. That pen was something I bought with my scholarship money during sophomore year. I had saved for an entire semester and searched across all of Beijing just to find that limited edition. The engraved letter on the cap was based on a design I personally drew myself. I gave it to her on her birthday, When she opened the gift box, her eyes had lit up for a brief moment before she scolded me for wasting money. Yet the very next day, she started using that pen, and she had carried it with her for years ever since. Now it was sitting in Peter's pocket. I turned off my phone screen and set it aside. Alan, however, was nowhere near as calm. He bombarded me with 7 or 8 screenshots in a row, all of them from Peter's WeChat posts, followed by another message. "Marco, is this guy insane? Look at this one from September 2nd. He says, Senior Elisa said my research thinking is clearer than anyone she's ever seen. And this one from September 5th. Elisa took me to her favorite Japanese restaurant. Isn't that your usual spot with Elisa? And this one is the worst, September 10th. He posted a picture of Elisa's apartment with the caption, Elisa's cat is really clingy with me. Isn't that the cat you two raised together? After looking through all the screenshots, I simply replied, It's fine. But Alan refused to let it go. What do you mean it's fine? What the hell happened between you two? And who exactly is this Peter? Peter was a junior under Elisa's advisor, a first-year graduate student 3 years younger than us. The first time I met him was last autumn. Elisa had brought me to a group dinner with her research team. Peter sat quietly in the corner and barely spoke, but whenever he did speak, he always knew exactly how to continue the conversation naturally. At the end of the dinner, he took the initiative to add both of us on WeChat and politely said, I hope to learn more from my seniors in the future. After that, he started appearing in our lives more and more often. Elisa said his family circumstances were difficult. His father had injured his back working on a construction site, and his mother farmed a small piece of land back in their hometown. He was the first person from his village to get into graduate school. His tuition came from student loans, and his living expenses depended on helping his advisor with projects. He's had a hard life, Elisa had said, so she started helping him. She helped him review papers, revise application materials, connect him with internship opportunities, and introduce him to people at academic events. On weekends, Peter often went to her apartment, saying he would cook or clean for her, though in reality he usually just stayed for a free meal. Elisa always let him stay for dinner, and sometimes she even invited me to join them. More than once, I told her she should keep some distance from him. Every single time, she would frown at me and say, What are you thinking? He's just a junior. It's already hard enough for him to survive alone in Beijing. What's wrong with helping him? I could never argue with her about it. Peter really knew how to behave. Every time he saw me, he would politely call me Marco, offer to help carry things, and insist on pouring tea during meals. Sometimes he would even message me on WeChat asking academic questions, always sounding respectful and perfectly proper. But I hated the way he looked at Elisa. That look was far too familiar to me because many years ago, I used to look at her in exactly the same way. Chapter 9. By the 3rd week in the new city, my life had gradually settled down. The company wasn't large, but the atmosphere was great. My desk was next to a window, and whenever I looked up, I could see mountains stretching out in the distance. The R&D team had 7 people, all of them young. At noon, we ordered takeout together, and sometimes after work we played basketball. Simon, who was in his early 40s, spoke in a calm and steady manner. After reading through some of my previous papers, he called me into his office and said, This research direction has a lot of potential. We may not have the resources of the big corporations, but we make up for it with freedom. Whatever you want to do, I'll give you the space. I said yes immediately. No one here was making decisions for me. No one kept saying, This is for your own good. The feeling was unfamiliar, but at the same time it felt right. On Friday night, the department held a welcome dinner. Mario chose the place, a barbecue restaurant hidden deep inside an alley. The signboard was darkened by years of smoke, but the skewers were genuinely delicious. After a few rounds of beer, everyone became much more relaxed and talkative. Marco, I heard from Simon that you almost went to Germany, Daisy asked from across the table. She worked in the testing team, wore her hair in a bun, and liked using hand gestures while speaking. Yeah, something came up, I replied. That's such a shame, she said sincerely. The Max Planck Institute is the kind of place I wouldn't even dare dream about. It's fine, I said with a smile. Things are good now. Mario immediately raised his glass and leaned over. Exactly. Now that you're here, you're one of us. Marco, forget the past. From now on, we work together. Our glasses clinked together with a sharp, crisp sound. By the time we left the barbecue restaurant, it was already close to midnight. The night breeze carried the scent of osmanthus flowers through the streets. I took a deep breath and suddenly felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in a very long time. Then my phone rang. Not my main phone, the other one. The old phone. After changing my number, I had kept the old device but rarely turned it on. For some reason, I had tossed it into my bag before coming out tonight. The screen showed more than a dozen unread messages, all from the same number. Marco, where did you go? Your landlord said you moved out. When did you terminate the lease? I asked your parents. They said they don't know where you are. Are you seriously playing games with me? Pick up. Pick up. Pick up. The final message was a voice recording. I hesitated for a moment before tapping the voice message. Elisa's voice came through the speaker, carrying a kind of panic I had never heard from her before. Marco, where are you? I'll come find you. Where are you? The background around her was noisy, sounding like a train station or an airport. Her voice kept breaking apart, almost as if the wind itself was scattering her words. After listening, I quietly put the phone back into my pocket. Up ahead, Daisy turned around and shouted, Marco, are you coming? Mario got a designated driver. He can drop you off on the way. Coming, I answered. Chapter 10. The next day was Saturday. I woke up naturally to sunlight pouring through the room at just the right angle. Outside, the shadow of the osmanthus tree swayed softly across the curtains in the breeze. After washing up, I decided to visit the nearby market. It had already been 3 weeks since I moved to the city, and during that entire time I had been surviving on takeout and the company cafeteria. The kitchen in my apartment was small, but it had everything I needed. Suddenly, it hit me that a long time ago I actually used to enjoy cooking. Back then, Elisa and I had just started living together. She didn't know how to cook at all. She could even burn scrambled eggs. I, on the other hand, loved being in the kitchen, chopping ingredients, adding seasoning, controlling the heat. Every step had its own calm and steady rhythm. Every weekend, I would go grocery shopping and come home to cook 3 or 4 dishes. Elisa's job was washing the dishes, though she never washed them very carefully, and I often had to secretly rinse them again afterward. Her favorite dish was my sweet and sour ribs. Every time I made it, she could finish 2 full bowls of rice. Marco, she would mumble with her mouth stuffed full of ribs, words slightly unclear. If you ever lose your job, just open a restaurant. I'll support you every day. Then will you invest? I would ask jokingly. Of course I will. I'll even invest my dowry. Back then, there would always be sauce at the corner of her lips, her eyes curving into a bright smile. I would hand her a tissue, but instead of taking it, she would lean closer and wipe her mouth on my sleeve. That was only last year. The market was about a 10-minute walk from my apartment. It wasn't very large, but it had everything. The woman selling fish chatted with the vegetable vendor beside her while cleaning fish, speaking in a local dialect I could barely understand. At the tofu stall, an elderly man sliced tofu slowly and carefully, every piece so even it looked like it had been measured with a ruler. I bought a pound of ribs, some green vegetables, and a bottle of Zhenjiang black vinegar from the seasoning stall. Back at the apartment, I blanched the ribs, stir-fried them, added caramelized sugar, soy sauce, and cooking wine, then finished everything with a splash of vinegar. The entire process came naturally to me, almost like muscle memory. By the time the sweet and sour ribs were done, the kitchen was filled with that familiar sweet and tangy aroma. I served myself a bowl of rice and sat by the window to eat. The taste of the ribs was exactly the same as before, but there was no one sitting across from me saying, Marco, if you lose your job, go open a restaurant. And there was no one wiping sauce onto my sleeve anymore. After finishing my meal, I washed the dishes, scrubbed the pan clean, then opened my laptop and started reviewing next week's work schedule. Life goes on. Chapter 11. By the middle of October, the weather had turned cooler. The osmanthus flowers had fallen across the ground, and the sweet fragrance that once filled the air slowly faded away. People on the streets started wearing long sleeves, and the breeze in the mornings and evenings carried a chill. Around this time, Peter's WeChat updates became much quieter. He had probably already enrolled successfully and no longer needed to maintain that carefully crafted image. Occasionally, he still posted something, usually pictures from academic conferences with simple captions and barely any comments underneath. Alan later told me that Peter never actually made it to the Max Planck Institute in the end. The issue with the recommendation letter had been exposed, and after re-examining his application, the institute discovered procedural problems. "Serves him right," Alan said in a voice message. "Things you steal always come with a price sooner or later." I didn't reply. On the second weekend of October, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Elisa's mother, Aunt Lynn. Her voice sounded exhausted over the phone. "Marco, how have you been lately? Your mom said you went south. How's work going?" I told her work was going well. She paused for a moment, as though she was carefully choosing her next words. "Marco, Auntie knows you and Elisa had a disagreement. That child has been spoiled ever since she was little. She doesn't always understand the consequences of her actions. You don't take it too personally. Auntie, it's not—" "Let me finish," she interrupted gently. "Elisa hasn't been doing well lately. She took a long leave from work and locks herself in her room every day. Her father went to talk to her, and she drove him out." I held the phone silently without saying anything. "That boy Peter comes over every day now. I don't feel comfortable seeing it. Marco, you and Elisa grew up together. 15 years of history. Is there really nothing left that can be talked through?" Auntie asked softly. "Auntie, some things lose their meaning once they're talked through," I replied. There was a long silence on the other end of the call. Finally, she sighed and said, "If you have time, give her a call. Just consider it a favor to me." After hanging up, I stood by the window for a long while. The osmanthus flowers had already fallen, leaving behind only bare branches. Beneath the tree, an old man was walking his dog. The little dog kept spinning in circles, chasing its own tail, never quite managing to catch it. Chapter 12. I didn't call Elisa, but she called me first. That night around 10, while I was reading a paper, the old phone inside my drawer suddenly started vibrating. At first I didn't want to answer it, but it kept ringing nonstop. Even after it stopped, it immediately started again. Finally, I picked up without saying anything. There was silence on the other end too, only faint breathing, as though she was afraid of disturbing something fragile. After a long time, her voice finally came through. "Marco." Her voice was hoarse, not from a cold, but from crying. I knew that sound too well. When she cried as a child, her voice would become like this, slightly nasal with the words trailing weakly at the end. "You finally decided to answer. What do you want?" I asked quietly. "Where are you?" "Down south." "I know you're in the south. Which city?" I didn't answer. On the other end, she took a deep breath as if trying to force her emotions back down, but she failed. Her voice started trembling. "Marco, you deleted my WeChat. You changed your number. You moved out of your apartment. Your parents don't know your address. People at your company said you're unavailable to take calls. You erased me completely from your world." By the end, her voice had broken apart into fragments. "What gives you the right? Elisa, what gives you the right to just leave like that? 15 years together, and you erase everything with one sentence? I know I was wrong about the recommendation letter, but you can't just sentence me to death over that." Her emotions poured through the phone like a flood breaking through a dam. I quietly waited for her to finish speaking, waited until her breathing slowly steadied again. Then I spoke softly. "Do you remember April 17th this year?" The line instantly went silent. That day my heart wasn't feeling right. It wasn't serious, but my chest felt tight and I couldn't breathe properly. I went to Anjin Hospital alone. I registered by myself, waited in line by myself, and did all the tests alone. The doctor said I needed a 24-hour Holter monitor. Electrodes attached all over my body with a small recorder to track my heartbeat for an entire day. Her breathing on the other end became faster. I continued calmly. After leaving the consultation room, I sat on a bench in the hallway. With all those electrodes attached, I couldn't move much. I called you 7 times. The first call rang 3 times before you hung up. The second wasn't answered. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh weren't answered either. I sat there watching people walk through the corridor. Elderly patients in wheelchairs, young mothers holding children, people supported by their families.